San Diego's campaign to protect people from unsanitary vehicle conditions, also known as the Vehicle Habitation Ban, is merely a thinly veiled attempt to criminalize homelessness.
It's my claim that San Diego's Vehicle Habitation Ban is bad law and should be repealed. And just so that everyone is familiar, here's a quick history of San Diego's Vehicle Habitation Law.
San Diego Municipal Code, Section 86.0137F, also known as the Vehicle Habitation Law, was enacted on August 15, 1983. It states that it is unlawful for any person to use a vehicle while it is parked or standing on any street as either temporary or permanent living quarters, abode, or place of habitation either overnight or day by day. Then, 35 years later, a federal judge ruled that the statute was unconstitutional for being too vague and inconsistently enforced. In February 2019, the San Diego City Council repealed the statute. In the following months, San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer made numerous media appearances vowing to make it illegal to live in one's own vehicle. Then, on May 19, 2019, San Diego City Council voted on a new municipal code, Section 87.0137F. The new code now states, "It is unlawful for any person to use a vehicle for human habitation on any street or public property unless the street or public property is specifically authorized for such use by the city manager, as follows. 1. Between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., and 2. At any time, within 500 feet of a residence or school." So what does that mean exactly, 500 feet from any residence or school? Well, here is a map you can clearly see of San Diego. And out here, I'm going to impose where 500 feet from any residence or school in San Diego is. These are places you are never allowed to sleep in your vehicle any time of the day. That's a great percentage. A lot of these areas that you see aren't shaded in are ravines, military areas that you wouldn't be able to park in anyway.
The first piece of evidence to support my theory that this ban is bad law and should be repealed is that it is unconstitutional and it's discriminatory against the homeless. The Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment in the Constitution precludes states from making unequal distinctions among people that are irrelevant to legitimate government concerns. Now, if there is, however, a legitimate government concern, then the focus is going to shift to the class of people that the law affects. Now, the law is very protective of those that are within what's called a suspect classification. Now, these are classes of people that the courts have found historically are susceptible to government oppression. Now, this is going to include things like race, religion, national origin, and alienage. Now, suspect classification has also been applied to gender, illegitimacy, and poverty. So, a law that infringes upon the rights of a suspect classification of people must pass what's called a strict scrutiny test, otherwise it's deemed unconstitutional. And what this means is that the law must have a compelling interest that justifies this restriction. It also must be narrowly tailored to achieve that interest, and it has to use the least restrictive means to achieve this purpose. Now, yes, there is a government interest, and this is the reason that was given to us, the reason to rewrite the form of vehicle habitation ban that was given to us by Mayor Faulconer.
My office and several of the city council offices have received hundreds of emails and calls complaining about trash, about drug use, public urination.
But this law is not tailored to address those concerns because it is overbroad in its reach. You don't have to ban sleeping in vehicles in order to ban this sort of behavior. And there already exists a more restrictive means to reach this goal. That goal is already reached by established laws. We have San Diego Municipal Code, Section 54.0209, which covers illegal dumping. We have California Health and Safety Code, Section 11550, which prohibits drug use. And we have San Diego Municipal Code, Section 56.55, which prohibits urinating and defecating in public. So it becomes evident that since this ban does not meet a strict scrutiny test against the suspect classification of people as inferred by the courts of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, that it is discriminatory. Now, unfortunately, California has a long history of enacting discriminatory laws against the poor and the homeless, all of which are eventually repealed. I mean, these are collectively known as vagrancy laws, laws designed to keep those who the social majority deemed unworthy out of the way. These include
Jim Crow laws. After the Civil War, many states, especially in the South, passed laws denying African Americans basic human rights. In California, these laws also targeted Chinese immigrants. In San Francisco, Chinese residents were forced to live in one area of the city. The same segregation laws also prohibited interracial marriage between Chinese and non-Chinese persons. Ugly laws. In 1867, San Francisco, by order of number 783, was the first city in the country to pass a law making it illegal not only to practice begging and panhandling within the city limits, but also making it illegal for people with unsightly or disgusting disabilities to appear in public. In many cities, these laws persisted until the 1970s. The American sense of individualism places the responsibility for personal needs with each individual. Our rugged individualism, coupled with the assumption that disability is somehow associated with lower socioeconomic status and race, plus our failure to develop a comprehensive universal health care and welfare system, led to the development of these ugly laws. Anti-Okie laws. In 1937, California passed an anti-Okie law that criminalized bringing or assisting extremely poor people into the state. These laws targeted Oklahomans, or Okies, who had migrated to California in search for a better life during the Great Depression. Oftentimes, large numbers of these Okies would set up encampments just outside of the city center. Sundown towns. Although rarely written down to municipal statutes, sundown laws were understood rules that minorities, homeless persons, and other persons considered to be socially undesirable were not tolerated within the city limits after sundown. In his book, Sundown Towns, James W. Lowen estimates thousands of these towns existed coast to coast during the 1890s to 1940s. Oftentimes, it was word of mouth that indicated which towns were sundown towns. Other times, signs at the city limits saying whites only within city limits after dark, or don't let the sun set on you here, understand, made it known. There are 6 well-known communities in California that are former sundown towns. These are Burbank, Glendale, Hawthorne, Hemet, Milpitas, and Taft.
Now, I would like to mention that this law does not just affect the homeless. It affects all of us. The second piece of evidence I have to support my claim that this ban is bad law and should be repealed is that the law does not allow for drivers to pull over and sleep in their car if they're drowsy. Now, I'm fairly certain that everyone has found themselves in a situation what is called drowsy driving. All right, that's driving while tired and maybe even nodding off a little bit, and the sound of your tires hitting the rough pavement on the side of the road is what kind of snaps you awake. Now, according to the National Sleep Foundation, most of the crashes or near misses occur between the hours of midnight and 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. and 6 a.m., which makes perfect sense because that's when most of us are sleeping. Now, drowsy driving, according to AAA, accounts for 328,000 crashes a year. Now, 109,000 of those end up in injuries, and 6,400 are fatal. The number one recommendation by the National Safety Council, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the Governor's Highway Safety Association, and the California Department of Motor Vehicles, when driving and you start to feel drowsy, is to pull over and take a nap. Now, if you are within the majority while driving drowsy, and it's somewhere between midnight and 6 a.m., and during that time, then San Diego law states that against the advice of all these other agencies I've named, you are not to take the steps necessary to ensure yours and everyone else's safety on the roads. And that's because it is a crime to sleep in your car in San Diego anywhere for any amount of time between the hours of 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. The last piece of evidence I have to support my claim that these vehicle habitation laws are bad laws and should be repealed is that the alternative given to those residing in their vehicles, the safe parking lots, are simply not adequate.
If you'll recall, San Diego's vehicle habitation ban included a caveat at the end stating that vehicle habitation was permitted in areas specifically authorized by the city manager. Now, there are 6 areas in town called safe parking lots, which are authorized by the city. They are run by 2 nonprofit organizations in town. There is one in Balboa Avenue, 2 near the intersection of Arrow Drive and Murphy Canyon Road, the SDCCU Stadium Overflow Lot, one in Grant Hill on 28th Street, and one on Imperial in Lincoln Park. Now, these lots hold anywhere from 10 to 40 spaces, except for the stadium lot, which has 200 spaces for cars or 80 spaces for RVs. Now, this provides only 320 spaces for what experts estimate a total of 1,500 people in San Diego County living in their vehicles.
For those who do make it to the lots, they are apt to encounter a few issues. First is time limitations. Now, these laws all have dark hours between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m., which of course coincide with the city ordinance. Now, during these dark hours, there are no in and out privileges allowed. So if a person needs to leave the lot for any reason, they are not allowed to come back in until 6 a.m. Now, at 7 a.m., to coincide with business hours, all participants must at that time vacate the lots and cannot return until 6 p.m. in the evening. Now, doing the math, that's about a 3-hour window to check in to the lot, make sure that they have everything set up for the rest of the evening. Now, unfortunately, if somebody has work or they have class that extend beyond 9 p.m., they're going to be forced to park illegally. Now, the second is the potential for misuse of police power. Now, the ease of which a patrol car could just come to the lot and run license plate numbers is completely real. I mean, with this, they could easily ticket expired tags, see if the owners have any outstanding warrants, check if they have insurance, etc. The third is forced social programs. Now, when I called the Jewish Family Services and Dreams for Change, the 2 nonprofits that run these safe parking programs, I found that in order to participate, individuals must sign up for various social assistance programs, which means, of course, providing identification and social security numbers. Now, then they're required to meet with the case manager at least twice a week and put their name and other information on a housing list. Now, in this, there are people like Juan Sanchez, for instance, who's from Northern California, living in an RV, because his son is being treated here for a rare disorder at Rady's Children's Hospital.
I live in Stockton, that's where I come from, but out here, unfortunately, I can't afford a house or an apartment. I mean, I thought it was going to be something just quick, but unfortunately, my son's condition is very serious.
And lastly, location, location, location. This law also serves as a means of controlling where people live. It may be very costly for people in gasoline to ensure that they get to one of these safe parking lots. Chris Enders, who is a local who lives in an RV with his wife and son, says that the Mission Valley lot, which is the only lot in San Diego that allows RVs, is not a valid option due to the amount of gas that's just required to get there and then leave, of course, every day. And many of these people are just traveling. But regardless of why, which view would you rather choose? Proponents of vehicle habitation laws pose a very weak defense. They cite noise ordinances, they cite trash, drug use, and urination and defecation on the streets. Those types of behavior are already illegal. They cite unsanitary conditions but offer no evidence. I occasionally won't get my car washed, but I wouldn't call it unsanitary. Mayor Faulkner, and indeed most mayors with vehicle habitation laws, claim that they're doing it in order to fight homelessness. But they're not fighting homelessness. They're fighting the homeless. Ticketing and criminalizing the homeless does not solve the homeless problem. It's only done in hopes that they'll just move on to a different town and then suddenly your city doesn't have a homeless problem anymore. Because in all reality, nobody who lives in a home that looks like this wants to be subjugated to look at this. Yes, there's a homeless problem, but I shouldn't have to look at it. So we enact the 21st century version of an ugly law and relegate them to the industrial section of town where the upper crust doesn't have to look at them. For many people, vehicle habitation is not a problem. It's a solution to stagnant incomes and soaring rent costs. A much better alternative they find than sleeping in shelters or on the streets.
Ils y doivent travailler devant la majestueuse égalité des lois qui interdit aux riches comme aux pauvres de coucher sous les ponts.
The law, in its majestic equality, forbids the rich, as well as the poor, to sleep under bridges. French novelist, Antollet, France, 1864.